The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
And welcome to this special edition of Live from the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. Today's program features members of the Greater Haverhill Chamber of Commerce. Here now is your host, Hillary Rogers.
So I want to thank everyone for coming today. Like I said, I'm from the Greater Haverhill Chamber of Commerce. We have about 500 members, and for those of you who aren't familiar with the Chamber of Commerce, we are a business organization. We help businesses in everything from marketing to professional development, things like this, teaching people how to do something that they might not know how to do. We do a lot of that with small businesses. We have a bunch of events coming up, and that's one thing I'd like to talk to you about today. We obviously have this event today on how to kind of become the expert in your field by using podcasting. The next event we have coming up is our Business After Hours and Broker Open House. That's on March 6th, hosted by Coco and Early. The next event we have is at Noonan's Florist and Greenhouse in Georgetown, Massachusetts. That is a tropical twist mixer. There's going to be all Caribbean-themed food, Caribbean-themed music, everything like that. That's on March 7th. The next thing we have is our Great WOW Conference, which stands for Winning Opportunities for Women. That is a women's conference that we get about 300 women coming to. We have about 6 speakers this year. That's on March 30th. That is going to be a great event. It's at Blue Ocean Music Hall. And if anyone has any questions about these events or wants to sign up, you can talk to me or any of the Greater Haverhill Chamber of Commerce staff members. Shoot me an email at hillary@haverhillchamber.com. And now I would like to introduce Dave Garofalo. He is the owner of Two Guys Smoke Shop as well as Studio 21 Podcast Cafe and the founder, I believe, of the Cigar Authority. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Thank you. Thank you for coming here doing this. We don't have quite the 300 people you're going to have at the WOW thing.
No.
We have a small group on here, but I am going to make the guess that this will be the most listened to Chamber of Commerce meeting you've ever had.
I think so. It might be.
Because we're doing this as a podcast and a vodcast. Vodcast meaning video on demand. So this is on YouTube along with 30 different podcast catches out there, and it's all around the world so people can get this and they can get it forever and ever. So whatever we do, we can certainly stop it and edit it out if we want, but we're good, right?
We're good.
We're good.
Yeah.
All right. So becoming the expert using podcasting and marketing is what I'm being told to talk about. And I'll tell you, in 2010, I was doing a lot of marketing and advertising. I own a cigar shop, and it turned out I've been a big marketer. I started Two Guys Smoke Shop in 1985 and spent a lot of money on marketing and promotional and advertising. But what they say is 50% of advertising works. Trying to figure out which 50% that is part of the battle, right? Trying to figure out what it is. And being in such a niche industry that I'm in premium cigars, 1 out of 1,000 people use my product, that I would spend lots and lots of money out to try to capture one customer. And as time went on, the advertising rates went up and the response rate went down. So there was less people getting the newspaper as I was advertising in the newspaper, less people reading it. The rates have gone up and it gets worse and worse. The same with radio, the same with television, because there are other means for it. So my daughter, teenage girl, said to me 8 years ago, "Dad, you need to get in social media." And I said, "What is that?" And she said, "It's Facebook." And I said, "Do it for me. I don't get this." And then after a while, she said, "Well, you got to go in there and respond to other people, and this is how you do it." So I was going on a trip, and I go into the bookstore one day at the airport, and I get a book on social media. So let me learn about this, because she's getting very frustrated with me. And I read about this podcasting. Now, this is 2010. And it was the guy actually from the Headbangers Ball on MTV that invented this podcasting. Right. And he said, "I'm doing music, so Adam Curry, why couldn't you do a talk show? And it would be on as it would be for music." So he creates the first one out there, and I'm interested in it. And I said, boy, this would be a lot easier than going on there and have to read everybody and follow what everybody's doing, because it wasn't a sociable thing for me. It was me trying to market my business using social media. As a sociable thing to see how my friends in high school are doing, that's one thing, but to try to actually market my business on it, in coming across as I'm trying to promote myself at the same time, because you have to be magic. You have to not promote yourself and promote yourself, that magic trick that's going on. So let me see about this podcasting. So in the thing, it says what you try to do as a podcaster is try to become the authority on the subject that you want to do it. So when I opened Two Guys Smoke Shop, it was me and a buddy of mine, two guys opening a smoke shop. So Two Guys Smoke Shop. Not a lot of work, not a lot of energy went into that thought. Doing a podcast, it was try to be the authority on the subject, the cigar authority. I said, okay, that's it. So, you know, not a lot goes into the way this mind works, but I wanted to do exactly that. And at the same time, when I have the Cigar Authority podcast, I would be telling the listener, this is what I like for cigars, and this is where I like to buy them, which is obviously Two Guys Smoke Shop. And I want to grow the listenership, which means I'm going to grow the people coming into Two Guys Smoke Shop. And I'll tell you, it really worked. I mean, dramatic increases, and you're talking about spending a lot less money, spending some time, but a lot less time and energy and money that was going into my marketing. So I cut that way down. At the same time, I grew the podcast into 1.6 million downloads per year, and that's on cigars. 1 out of 1,000 people use my product, and 1.6 million people are listening to me talking about a cigar, and I've had 450 episodes. You know, it's an episode every single week for the past 8 years, and my show is 2 hours long. By the way, don't do a 2-hour podcast. I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, and one of them was doing a 2-hour podcast, but I thought that's what you had to do. And as the podcast grew, it grew into the top 10 educational podcasts on Podbeam, which is our podcast catcher where we funnel the podcast into and they go from there. The top 10 of all educational podcasts, Learning Russian is one ahead of us. And the Cigar Authority, you know? So a lot of major things ended up happening. And then people were coming from far and wide to come up and see Two Guys Smoke Shop, because that's what we talked about, or to see us do the show. So we do the show at the store. I thought that would be unique, that you walk into the store, and people were coming from, you know, as far, we're in New Hampshire, they were coming from as far as South Carolina and stuff to come up and, oh, I came to see the show. And I'm like, oh my God, I better spruce this up a bit, because it was on a folding table with a couple of mics. We have to increase and improve it. I was saving on my regular advertising, and I was spending a lot of money. And then it dawned on me of monetization of the show, where I have a direct target market, which is people, everybody that listens to the Cigar Authority, except for you, listener right now, that's going to listen for the first time to see what the show's about, really likes cigars. That's why they would be listening to the Cigar Authority. And what better thing if you were selling a cigar product, a cutter, a lighter, or an ashtray, a cigar itself, than to direct target market, meaning 100% of the people listening to this show, the Cigar Authority show, would be interested in cigars. Therefore, as opposed to me advertising the way I advertise, 1 out of 1,000 people that were reading the newspaper cared about a cigar. This was direct target marketing. So the advertiser quickly came at that point, and we started building it up. Before I knew it, we ran out of space. Remember, in a 2-hour show, we have 25 advertisers within every show. And we ran out of spots. It's so top-heavy of advertisers, but it's advertising in different ways, that we can have segments that are brought to you by, and you know, when we cut our cigar, brought to you by the cigar that cut their prices, and come up with creative ways of little things what to say, or the studio name, and different things that we add advertiser to. And so I decided to create a second show, because I filled it up. Again, I'm a businessman, and saying no to somebody looking to spend money is very, very tough for me. So I asked my employees, would you mind going up on a Wednesday and doing a show, smoke a cigar and talk about the show for an hour, get off the sales floor, sit down, smoke a cigar while you're on the clock? And they said, sure. So we created a second show called The Ash Holes, so I could continue to take more advertising dollars. And that has moved up and continued to grow. Last year, and I'll share this numbers with you, 2017, I received $157,000 in ad revenue for my podcast. So a 6-figure income just from doing my podcast, which is driving business to my business. And I can get really deep into you. You ever want to come up to Studio 21 and sit down, and I'll tell you different things that I did that, you know, a customer wrote in, not a customer, a listener, wrote in and said, the cigar you smoked during the show, I would like to know what that is in advance. So let me know the week before so I can go to my regular store that I buy cigars at and buy that cigar, so that when you're smoking it during the show and talking about the subtleties of flavors, I'll be smoking it along with you. And I said, we can do that. And I said, but I would be driving them to somebody else's store. So we created a care package where every month I send them 4 cigars for $20. We have 500 people. It's $250,000 of ad revenue that goes there because our listeners actually buy the product that we're talking about. So there's many, many ways, and I'm just telling you on my little cigar end of ways to monetize it. And as I did that, and I would talk to friends in all kinds of businesses, I figured if I'm in the cigar business and I can figure this out for cigars, every other business is easier than cigars. I'm in the tobacco business. We cannot advertise on Google. We cannot advertise on Facebook. Lots of places will not accept our advertising. Legal as it is, they will not accept it. So our hands are tied, and I got creative because my hands were tied. But everybody else, listen, if I'm doing those kind of numbers with a product that 1 out of 1,000 people use, you guys can do way more. But the thing is, how do you do it? And are you up for doing it? Because I made a lot of mistakes of the equipment I bought. I bought the equipment 3 times, so shame on me, because the first time I didn't know it, but the second time I thought I knew what I was doing. I didn't. And then the third time, so I get the right equipment. And then it's, how do I use the equipment? And I'm using it wrong. We have our own producer that's on the side over here, making sure that this voice sounds as good as it can. It's terrible, I know it's terrible, but it is what it is. And that's another thing. I do the show, this is who I am. The first couple of episodes of the Cigar Authority, I tried to be a professional broadcaster, and it was terrible. Don't go back and listen to those shows. But I was trying to be somebody I wasn't, and then I said, it's just easier to be me. So we just be yourself when you do a podcast, whether you do it at Studio 21 or you do your own podcast. Just be yourself. It's so easy to play yourself, right? It's going to be easy to do. But I can do this for other people. So we have the studio set up for our own sake. If anybody wants to be part of this and do their own for their own show, we have the facility to do it. And you just walk in with your bullet points of what you talk about. You sit in a chair, you do the broadcast, and you walk away. And when you walk away, that's when the hard work starts. That's when we're going to try to put you on the 30 different podcast catches. Not just one. We want you on a whole array of places that people can get you. Also, we mentioned earlier that we're doing video at the same time. This is vodcasting also, video on demand. So if you wanted to watch this, and there's really nothing to watch. There's 2 people sitting at a table. You could watch it. You could watch it on, say, YouTube, along with lots of other places. If you were hearing impaired, you could watch it and see that it's closed captioned automatically for you on YouTube. So somebody hearing impaired can actually watch your show. But there's a big other reason why you want to have a vodcast along with a podcast, and it's not for the small amount of viewers that you're going to get, because it's going to dwarf your numbers. We do about 300 viewers of our show, and we do about 160,000 listeners. 300 viewers, 160,000 listeners per episode. So it's dramatically different of the amount of people that watch to listen. But something else in the background is happening. Google loves video. So Google is picking up these millions of megabytes of information that's having it, and Two Guys Smoke Shop, the Cigar Authority, and David Garofalo is ranking very, very high when it comes to cigars. And it's growing my business at the same time. And a couple of years from now, Facebook will only be accepting video. There will be no more you writing on there. There will be no more you, and this is to know this industry of not where it is today, where it is going, the direction it's going, is a big thing for you to go. Do you want to go in the direction it's going, or do you want to go where it is now and watch it fade away from you? So we want to go in the direction that it's going. So video is where it's going. Google loves it. Google owns YouTube to begin with, so you're automatically going to rank high by doing that. At that point, you have that YouTube link. You can take that YouTube link, share it on all your other social media that you want. For video, you can also take the Podbeam link, which is audio only, share that. The idea is to get people to subscribe to it. So if you're on Studio 21 Podcast Cafe right now, or the link that you just provided that they're listening to from the Chamber of Commerce, you can go on to Studio 21 and hit subscribe. By hitting subscribe, automatically every show that comes out is automatically going to be downloaded to you. It will cost you nothing. It doesn't use up any of your memory or anything like that, but you get the next edition of what it is. Same thing if you go to the cigarauthority.com, hit subscribe. Every single show is going to go there. When a new one comes up, it'll pop there. So we want to do that for anybody that wants to join our little group here. And the little group we have is called United Podcast Network, the United Podcast Network. So one of the places you want to go with your podcast is going to be iHeartRadio. iHeartRadio could cost you as much as $5,000 to get onto that platform. But if you came to a group, the United Podcast Network, we're taking everybody within our group and putting them on iHeartRadio. So there's no charge. The charge is to the whole group, and we automatically get in. Also, if you want to get onto iTunes, it may take you as much as 20 weeks to get on iTunes, but the person that's going to put it through is the United Podcast Network, and we already have a dozen shows, and you're going to get in as fast as probably 2 weeks into there, and your old show will show up along with everything else that happened, because we're kind of building a rapport, and the stronger we get, the more united we get with more people, the more we grow, which is what the Chamber of Commerce is all about, right?
Absolutely.
Everybody grows together.
Yeah, and I have one question for you. So you own the United Podcast Network.
Yeah.
Wow. I wasn't sure if you're just a part of it, or that's great. So that's great.
And I'm like a control freak that I want. I want every aspect of whatever can happen to do it. So I said, if I'm going to start the second podcast, I'm going to have to actually pay $5,000 more for this and this and this. Let me just put it through this, and I'm paying it once. So I save myself $5,000, and I'm going to save everybody that comes along $5,000 through mine. But what I want to stress here is to the people that are considering doing podcasting, you can do it yourself, and you can do it for free, and you should do it. You should stop thinking about doing it and start doing it, because it does make a big difference, and you're going to hate your first episode. Everybody does, but you can't improve the first episode until you do the first episode. So the answer is to start doing it, and I started 8 years ago. This is the golden age. I was ahead of my time. This is the ideal time to do it. New automobiles are coming equipped with podcasts built into the automobile. So, this is it. We have our own radio station and our own TV station, and it's right here on your phone. That's all you have to have. But if you're a businessman and you're busy and you don't want to buy equipment and bother with the production of it and all that stuff, having a place to just walk in with your show notes, you show up, you do the show, thank you guys, you walk out, and all the work is done for you. That's why we created the Studio 21 podcast, to do it all for you. And that's it. We can do it all for you. If you're interested, please come up and see me. You can write to me at dave@studio21podcast.cafe. dave@studio21podcast.cafe. And that's how we can talk. Schedule a meeting with me. I'll buy you a cup of coffee. We have great coffee. And you'll see Sean the barista, because it is a cafe too. So you are doing your podcast in front of a live studio audience. And if you're a little nervous of doing podcasting, this is the best thing to do, is do it right out there in front of people. And what may hopefully happen is, while you're doing a podcast, somebody in the audience wants to use your service or your business or whatever, and you'll make sales right there. So there's lots to it. But what I'd like to do is, when you welcome me to come here and you put a notice out there, somebody reached out to us saying that they do a podcast and would like to come up and mention it. And it's Ben Consoli, and he does a podcast called the Go Creative Show podcast, and he's celebrating 1 million downloads to his podcast. So I'd love to hear it, if that's okay.
Absolutely,
to bring Ben
absolutely.
up. Come on, Ben, grab that mic there, and let's hear your success on podcasts and what you think of this mess.
Hold on, I'm trapped under your chair.
You got it?
Hillary, what are you doing to me?
Yeah,
it's under the other leg too. This is what it's all about.
This
Just
is
letting
live.
the technical details.
But this is
fly
live
by.
TV, live radio.
Exactly.
And
Good now?
I am good.
Okay,
Thank you. I come on. I'm such a diva. I'm like, where's my cable? I need water. I need all this. What a pain in the ass. Yeah, my name is Ben Consoli. I am a director, and I own a small production company right in downtown Haverhill. And that was the reason that I did the podcast. I mean, it's like being able to have a podcast to talk about your work and talk about your successes and failures sometimes
Right.
is it made you relatable. It positioned you as a thought leader. And my podcast, Go Creative Show, is doing just that. I'm able to talk about my business. And because of it, I have gotten definitely, I can probably point to maybe 10 or 15 clients that directly came to me because they've heard me on the show. And for the others, being able to Google my name and find that there's a podcast out there
Right.
that I'm hosting and talking to people in the industry gives me credibility. So they trust that when they hire me, they're actually going to get a product at the end.
Do you bring guests on?
Yeah, we do. The thing is with us is our guests are predominantly people in the filmmaking industries. So it's like they are director of photographies, producers, audio people, set designers, all that. And they're out in LA. They're all over the world shooting. So most of our interviews are done via Skype.
Yeah, sure.
Or Zencaster. And and so it's audio only because of that reason. And hearing
we
you
do
talk
both.
about, well, the thing is with me is when I'm dealing with these people, I am like, they'll say, yeah, I can spare an hour, but I'm going to be in my hotel or I'm going to be in my trailer and the internet connection stinks and they don't know what they're doing and they just need something super easy.
Right.
And for me, Skype audio only has been the best only for our guests. The downside is I miss out on the video portion, which
Right.
I really should be embracing.
You should be.
Because that's what I
That's
do.
what you do. It's right. And it
it's
better
like-
be good.
Yeah, it's like, hey, hire me. I can make you a great video, except for the fact that you're not going to see this on video. You're only going to hear it. But yeah, that's the challenge that I have with Go Creative Show in coming here and seeing Studio 21 Cafe and how established it is and how beautiful it is. And I mean, this is a thriving platform here. And talking to someone like you that's been so successful in this industry is, it's inspiring.
It's going to get tougher because I think a lot of people are going to get into it later on when they figure this out. And right now, it's the time to end up doing it because it's easy to shine right now because there's not all that many people doing it.
Yeah.
And before you know it, if it ends up getting that everybody is in on it, now you're going to be just one of them.
Yeah.
But I certainly stand out in my little industry that there's a couple of people that have come in and gone out. And there's some people that actually every once in a while do a podcast. And this is one of my successes, I think, and I try to tell everybody that comes on board here that you have to be an every week podcast at the same time. And you have to be, you got to take it as serious as it is because you want the listener to always come and listen to you. Therefore, you always have to be there for them. So we broadcast our show on a Saturday. I know on Monday morning at 6 a.m. becomes the big hits, and we can see those numbers coming in. So people driving to work are tuning in every single Monday. Can you imagine a Monday if I skipped the show? All of a sudden, I'm not there. They see it's not there. They find something else. And God forbid they like something else, they're not going to be loyal to me. So consistency has been everything to us, that every single week, no matter what, and we'll put one in a can. We'll make an extra one and just have it there. God forbid something happens or something. We got to back up to end up having a new episode. But it's always something there consistent, and they've been consistent to us to end up having those kind of listeners. We're actually interviewing on our show this week. On our first episode, there was somebody that listened to our show. There was only one person, besides people I knew, that I said, hey, listen to this. And he was in Canada, of all places. And years later, I got to know that this person existed. Here we are 8 years into it. And we're bringing him on the show to actually interview him via Skype and have him come on and say, it's 8 years. Why are you still listening to this? Because I have nothing more to say. I've been talking about cigars for 8 years. But the guy
That's
still
cool.
listens to. He's been consistent to me.
What do you say?
Well, it'll be this week. You got to tune in.
I
this
see.
Saturday.
Okay, so it's
that's
coming
a
up.
teaser, folks, and that's to bring the people back onto the show.
It's interesting you talk about consistency because that's something that is always brought up when we talk about successful podcasting, like making sure that people know that they're going to get what they expect from you on a consistent basis. The other thing is nuance, which I found interesting because a lot of people I talk to about it, they'll say, well, no one wants to hear me talk about X, Y, and Z. There's such a small group of people that care about this. I found with podcasting, the more nuanced, the better. The more you can obsess over the most nonsensical, like crazy thing, people are going to love it.
Yeah, go tight and deep on the subject matter, whatever it is. For me to be able to talk about cigars for 2 hours a week for 8 years, it's tight and deep. Whatever the heck we're talking about is very, very deep on that certain subject. And obviously you have to throw personality and entertainment in along with it so it's not dry and boring. And people get to know my dog and my wife and my daughter, and because these things come up.
Yeah.
But then they connect with you even better, and then you're trusted more. They like you. They have to like the person to continue to listen on to it. And I bump into these people at cigar conventions, and I'm a successful retail shop owner, but I'm Dave from the Cigar Authority, not from Two Guys Smoke Shop, and it's because of the show, and they know me a lot better. They know way too much about me that I get home sometimes, my wife is like, you had to bring that up? Personal stuff. And I'm like, it just came up and nobody was listening.
Well, are you a talk radio fan to begin with?
I was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that personal stuff, that's like golden age of talk radio stuff, putting your whole life out there.
Here's the odd thing. I was a nightclub disc jockey for 12 years.
Really?
So it was music, and I was a top club DJ in the late 70s throughout the 80s, and I just had enough of music. So when I wasn't working, because music became work, I would listen to talk radio.
Yeah.
And even our producer, he was talk radio for 30 years, Stu?
38 years.
38 years.
In both music and talk radio. Started in talk radio.
With the biggest and best. So he ends up losing his job in radio because there's consolidation and things that happen. And he comes up and I said, what do you think of this? And he says, oh my God, this is the thing that killed radio. But it isn't. Yeah. Radio was dying, and this just became the next thing. So the analogy I have is, if you were making typewriters, and you made the greatest typewriter in the world, and you didn't evolve and start making keyboards, you are out of business. Yep. But you could start making keyboards. So make the keyboard. If you're doing marketing and advertising in a different way, you can continue to do some of it if you think there's something to it, but if you see it dropping off like I did, go to the next step, and this is the next step.
I have a question for you about Patreon.
Yeah.
There's some of my peers that are doing similar podcasts in the video and film production industry have opted to not have, opted to, I'm breaking the fourth wall, I guess.
That's
for the
okay,
people
that's all right.
It's a very live type of an environment. There's people walking in, for those of you listening, saying, why am I just randomly saying hi? I lost my... Patreon. Yeah, so some of my peers that are doing this have opted to not have advertisers and just do Patreon. I myself have advertisers, and I'm a little nervous about the Patreon route and curious what your thoughts are.
Can you explain that? I'm sorry, I don't really know what that is.
Patreon is like... it's
donations.
A way, it's a way for people to donate to you or your podcast in this case, but it could be anything. You can set up a Patreon account and people can donate to you.
So and they can say $2 a month. So I'll give them $2 a month, $5 a month, whatever.
Because I appreciate listening to them.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
And we can give a little something extra. So the Patreon listener or something, you can say, we'll give you the after show also. So when the show's over, we're going to be on for 5 minutes after the show, and we're going to talk about what we just talked about, which if you didn't have enough of it, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, these are some of the things that people do, and those, if they're real fans, they're going to end up doing that. I'm a marketing and promotional and business person. I say go for everything. Why not try to get every single thing out of it? If somebody wants to donate, and I actually have never done that, but why not if somebody wanted to donate, they want to donate to it. We set up things that if somebody wanted their logo, there's companies out there that make one-at-a-time things, and if you go on to the Cigar Authority, you'll see merchandise. There's T-shirts, hats, bumper stickers, bed sheets. There's everything that says the Cigar Authority on it, and we don't make any of them. This company out there makes it. When somebody orders one, they order one, and they send us a piece of the action. And that's it. And, I add $1, just so you know what the costs are. I add $1 on there, not because I want the dollar. I want you to actually have the advertising of our company on there, but I want to be able to track it. So $1, when they send me a check for $42, 42 people bought something. There's 42. I end up looking at this stuff, what it is. And that's the only reason why. But there's I'm going blank with the name of the Cafe Press.
Oh, yeah, I know
Cafe
exactly
Press.
what you're talking about. Yes,
and
yes,
you
yes.
put that link right up there, and they do all that stuff for you. Just any way you possibly can. But why not help somebody who listens to your show, for instance, that camera equipment or lighting or whatever it is that they think they have the best bulb or whatever it is that's going to be there, and they would want to be talking to your audience, that they would want to say that we have the best bulb. And certainly if they don't have the best bulb, you don't want to say they have the best bulb, because you have to be loyal to your credible and truthful, because you're playing the long game here. But they're talking directly to that person. They do have a great bulb. You want to mention it to them, and for that, it's a bright idea, and they'll say, you know, here's the advertising. It's time for the Bright Idea segment, brought to you by the lighting bulb person, and the lighting bulb person loves it and says, okay, let's do that.
I'm just picking up now the Bright Idea segment.
Yeah, there you go.
It's just flowing out of you.
It just comes out. You know what?
I love that.
So here's something I haven't monetized yet, which is a ball. And I saw this ball on Shark Tank. I thought it was the coolest thing, so I ordered it immediately. And this is in case somebody in the audience has a question. And if they do, you throw them the ball. And the ball is actually a microphone. And while it's in flight, it makes no sound. When it stops, it opens up, and they talk into the ball. And then they pass the ball, pass the buck, and pass the thing. Does anybody have a question? Don't be shy. Okay. I'm gonna
what happens if you hit someone in the face?
So you can't break it.
Talking to the hole there, right there.
Hi.
Hey, there you
Wow,
go.
look at that.
I caught the ball.
How cool is that?
Good. I was wondering about, so what would it, if you were to come to Studio 21 and want to do a podcast off the street, do you provide the producer as well?
Everything.
Everything. And what does something like that cost per, and how
So
long
what I want is a weekly contract from you, saying, which you can break at any time, but I want you to be successful, and I know that being successful is going to require you to make the commitment to your listener, and the listener to make the commitment for you. So I would want you to say, okay, every Tuesday at 2 o'clock, I'm going to do this show, and it's going to be under an hour long. And now, how far do you want to go? Do you want to just do an audio show? If that's the case, we can do it as low as $99. Or do you want to do everything, which is audio, video, us handling the distribution of it, keywords, search engine optimization, everything that happens, and that's $199 per week. So now the idea is for you to get advertisers and promoters on there, so this show doesn't at least cost you any money, and then eventually making money. Every time you do the show, you make money on it.
Great.
Do you help with that, the next step of getting the advertisers? Do you help with that
Well, right now, the only thing I've done is help them in this is how to do it. Teach you how to do it. And you can go on to Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, and you know, I've done this a lot of times. People are asking the same questions all the time. So now each week, when do we do it? Studio Wednesdays, I believe.
Wednesday afternoons.
Wednesday afternoon, I do a show called Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, a 21-minute or less podcast about podcasting. And I tell you each step of what it is. So you want monetization of the podcast, you'll see a little thing, monetization, and I'll do 20 minutes on this is different ways of monetizing, Patreon, and all the different things that could end up happening, of ways to end up doing it. If you want to get any deeper into it, here's what to do. Come and meet with me or whatever. I'm happy to help you. But I did put in our contract, if you want us to go out there and aggressively get advertisers for you, we're going to take 50% of that. I would rather you go out and do it than me take any of that money, because I don't know your industry. So I have to actually find people. I can tell you that you're going to have a better chance at it because you know the guy that sells the light bulb, because you buy them from him. And you say, how about supporting the show or whatever, and here's the bright idea, and he likes where it's going, okay, let me do it, as opposed to I'm going to call up and say, well, this guy buys from you, and what do you think about doing the lighting, and here's the idea of it, and I'm going to sell it to him. And then he's going to say, okay, I'll do it, and I'm taking half.
Yeah.
Because I want you to do it. So I've never taken half from anybody. I hope never to. I hope you go do it yourself. But if you're going to make me go to work, it's going to cost you. So do it yourself.
Going down the road of advertising, I have a question about how you, with radio, there was a structure on what each advertiser paid and what the worth is. Is there something equivalent in podcasting where an advertiser, like, what I'm trying to figure out is how do you value the listenership that you have?
So it's cost per thousand. So there's actually companies, once you start getting to about 20,000 listens per episode, you can contact companies out there and you can just Google search them, and they will have national advertisers that are interested in your product. For instance, the Shave of the Month Club type of things that are out there.
Yeah.
Is very, very interested in the Cigar Authority, because I have a 100%, just about 100% male audience that's 21 years or older. They probably shave, so they want that audience, and they're willing to pay $15 to $50 per thousand. So it all depends on the audience. If they're hitting a direct target market of shavers, let's assume, or cigars in this case, it was a cigar company that they would say more closer to the 50, but let's go to the low end and say $15. $15 times, we have 20,000 listeners per episode, 15 times 20.
You're asking me to do math?
$300 an episode. So it would be $300 for the commercial that they're willing to pay once you built up to that 20,000.
And are you giving them some sort of chart, or? So
this is the thing about when it comes to podcasting, there's no messing around. So some newspapers will say, we produce 20,000 newspapers. That means they put the newspapers wherever they are, and there's a stack of newspapers that are over there. They didn't sell the newspaper, nobody has it, and eventually they're going to get thrown away, and nobody actually read it. When it comes to radio, they're going to look at where the radio signal is. They're going to say there's so many people living in that area, and that they're 12% of the listenership, what that is, and they're going to come up with a number. There's no proof, there's no click that's happening. When it comes to podcasts, you actually have to download it. You have to click the button.
Yeah.
So there's no messing around, and if you click the button 20 times, and I tried, you only get one click. So there's no fooling around. These are real, accurate numbers. And as a business owner, I need to know the real numbers. I don't need the fluff. I need to know if this is working for me so that I can make a shift. If something's not going right, okay, it's a shift because of the number of these false numbers. It was always terrible to know.
Now, how many listeners do you think a podcast would get, a new podcast would get within the first year? What's a number you think that they should?
So I'm looking at the people that we started Studio 21 Podcast Cafe on September 30th last year, 2017. So we're 5 months into it, and and we have a dozen podcasters here. Not all that started at the same time, but they're averaging about, I would say, 7,000 downloads per month. 7,000. What you're looking for national advertising, and when I tell you there's only the top 2-3% or something hitting that number, because they don't know what they're doing, but because everybody that has a cell phone or something says I can do a podcast, but as we get into people that know what they're doing, the number ends up getting much larger, but you get to 20,000 per episode, so you're talking about 100,000 per month, and where my new people are at 7,000 per month, we're looking for 100,000 per month for a national advertiser. That's if they want a national advertiser. I'm at that number. I don't want the national advertiser because I'm doing better with my direct target market, which are the people that they want 100% cigar people that are listening. So I have cigar advertisers and cigar cutters and lighters and that type of thing. I would be taking, I charge more than that. I'm charging $3,500 per quarter for an ad on my show. I have 25 ads per show, and I made $157,000 last year. When somebody got in, we originally started charging $1,000 per quarter for an ad, and anybody that came in those early days when I was charging that still pays that amount. So when somebody is looking to get out, it's actually in my best interest. If they get out at $1,000, I have a waiting list of people looking to pay $3,500. So it's actually, but they were there from the very beginning, so I want to be good to them and hold on to them, and I do, and nobody's leaving. It's been working for them. There's a win-win situation. So here's a free show if you're into cigars, that we talk about cigars, and you can get the cigars if you want and participate into it, and we try to make it as educational and fun as we possibly can, free to the consumer. To me, I make a lot of money doing the show, and to the advertiser, they're having a direct target market and they're paying far less than they would for anything else for a direct target. There's a win-win-win situation. And that is in mine. I see the win-win-win situation in everybody's.
How do you incorporate the YouTube views into your like overall numbers? Like when people are advertising on your show, are you giving them Libsyn charts as well? Or I don't know what you guys use, but
we use Podbeam, but we...
Okay, but are you giving like those charts in addition to the
Correct.
YouTube views?
We give it all.
Okay.
But they can easily go onto YouTube
Of course,
and look at that little number. And I tell them before they even start, don't get frustrated because podcasting is an audio thing.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen with the video portion of it is going to do different things to your business, which is search engine optimization, and what's going to happen for hearing impaired to be able to view it, and different people, different things that's going to happen in the background of it. So it has a value, but if you looked at just those numbers, it's not good. You know, comparatively, it's a fraction of a percent.
When we're thinking about the members of the Haverhill Chamber of Commerce, I mean, that's just like one small city in a big state in an even bigger country. The possibilities really are endless for how many people can benefit from either producing their own podcast, certainly being on a podcast. I mean, from your perspective, Hillary, like what are you seeing podcasting being able to do for the people in the Haverhill Chamber?
Well, I mean, I just have a question too. Do you sell any of your cigars online?
Yes.
Okay, so that's, I think, you know, and how many people would you say come to your store yearly because they heard of this podcast?
I don't know how many to give you an exact number, but for a 33-year-old business to continue to grow, a brick and mortar business, very, very tough, right? Brick and mortar's having a hard time because everything went online, including cigars. But my business grew 5% last year. A 33-year-old business continued to grow. That wasn't happening before I did the podcast. We were seeing dips for the first time ever. And that's when I start freaking out, when I see the numbers going in the wrong direction. Oh, what am I going to do about it? You can complain, you can feel sorry and blame whatever, or you can do something about it. I did something about it, not knowing that it was going to work as well as it did, but it did.
I just think, I mean, I think it's interesting for every industry. They can kind of, you know, like you said, become the expert in the industry, and I think that's important for everyone. I mean, just by having a podcast and having this kind of this reputation and credibility is important to every business.
The people I get to interview, I would never be able to talk to. You know, people showing up at events and things we do, famous people because they actually heard the podcast, some weird things. I could go on all day and tell you. Does anybody else have any questions out there in the audience? She wants the ball.
Grab that ball.
So I have a question for you. I know that with the podcast, everything is talk radio. What if I wanted to do a podcast with music? Is that possible, or do I have to deal with paying the PROs?
Well, that's going to be the big problem, that you're going to get dumped off because it's not going to be licensed music. So you heard the little music that played before we started the show, so that's royalty-free music, and we're okay with it. We made these mistakes, believe me. We would have little bumpers and stuff with little Rolling Stones thing. And the next thing, the whole show is gone. There's no audio at all on the whole show. And I'm like, what the hell happened? And then we contact them. And old shows, they go back and delete all these old shows that the computer found this little Rolling Stone bumper music that came in. And I'm like, okay, we can never do that again. So these are some of the live and learn. You cannot. They want money.
I think there is something, though, with Spotify, I think, where you can basically like control your own station there and kind of have like a playlist that people can subscribe to. I don't know if you can then input, you know, little like audio segments of your own in there. That may be a possibility, but I know there are people on Spotify and Apple Music that I'll follow that are just regular people that put together great playlists.
So, all right. Thank you. Thank you. I do that now.
Hi, team.
Hi.
My name's Doreen, and I'm a brand builder at Savory Insights. So,
nice. Getting that in there?
Yeah,
See,
she's good at
love
that.
it.
She's good at that.
That's
Yes.
good.
My question for you is, are you able to take us through a couple of case studies of your own? You know, you mentioned the different podcasts that are established and how they're ramping up, but I think what I'm looking at is I'm happy with an investment, but what does that path look like as you start to move down the first 4 weeks and 5 weeks and 12 weeks? And
So
and now I'm working on advertising and bringing the advertisers in. And so I think a process question is what I'm asking, as well as a cash flow.
So for me, these people are far exceeding in the short period of time than I did, because I didn't know what I was doing, and as I learned, I could do it a lot better for somebody today. So you look at their first podcast, and we have 12 different podcasts, so it's actually nice because I can look at each one and see what's happening. So maybe their first month they did is 700 listeners or so, and then the second month they go in and they're about 3,000 listeners, and the next month they're 5,000 listeners, and now they're 8,000 listeners in. And this is how it's been for not the majority, for actually 12 for 12. This is how every single one of them is gone. So I'm watching this. I want them to be successful, but I also care about what are they trying to accomplish. So I not only watch their show, I listen to their show, and when you watch a show and listen to a show, it's different, and you know the majority of people are listening. So I want to see both of them and try to help them along. They can do some advertising in the front of the desk that we have here, right? So they can put the name of their company and their thing. I try to let them know to make sure that they say the name of their company at the beginning and end at the very least. Some sort of ask that they're going to do. And I was telling Ben earlier that I have one podcaster that I thought I was letting him down. And I said, geez, you know, I asked the barista, Sean, that's over there while the show was going on, what is the name of this guy's company? Not the name of his podcast, but what's the name of his company? And he said, I don't remember. And I said, I know. And I told him what it was, but I said, he never mentions it. He's not saying it. He needs to say it. And it's bothering me so much that he's not doing it. And I actually sent him an email and said, make sure you include this. And he's not doing it. And they're having a good old time, a fun time. And they're in the attorney that does home sales. And at the end of it, I waited till there was nobody around. I said, let me talk to you for a second. And I said, listen, you really have to, I got to put the name of your company in the front of the thing, and you have to say this and this and this. You have to get it in. He's laughing at me as I'm trying to help him out. He's laughing in my face. I'm trying to help the guy out. And I said, what? And he said, I'm not trying to sell to the listener. And I said, what are you trying to do? He said, the person that I'm bringing on to interview is a real estate broker. I am the lawyer that closes the house sales. I bring them on the show, and they give me all their closings, 100%. He said, I'm making a fortune on this. I'm batting 1,000. Every single one of them is doing their closings through us. I bring a different one on every week. I can't even handle the business that I'm getting. I need more people to end up doing this. So that is my customer. Although the show is entertaining, I don't need to talk to the audience to please buy my product, because typically they don't buy your product. It's the real estate guy that brings you on to the guy that does the closing for you. So that is who I'm geared to. But we have a very entertaining show that everybody likes to watch and everybody wants to be on, so there's the hook there. And I go, okay, that makes sense. Each and every show, each and every company is different. I got to figure out, hopefully along with the person, unless they come in and they say, I know exactly what I want to do, this is what it is. If they ask for criticism and they ask for help, I want to help. I typically will email them so they can just delete it if they're not happy with what it is. But if they want to get into it, because my success is going to be their success. For me to have 50 podcasters, that's 50 hours in a week, that every single week that they're on, and they don't go away because they're successful, is my goal. So I need only successful podcasters. So I'm figuring out as I go along, and I don't know everything about everybody. I know the cigar business, that's it. But again, back to, I think I had the toughest business of all. Every one of them since that has come in has been a lot easier to try to figure out how to monetize or how to get the listener or whatever, as opposed to the tobacco business, because our hands are tied. We can't advertise, we can't Google, we can't Facebook, we can't do anything.
This feels so like a supersized mic. I'm holding a ball for those that are listening, right? So I think another question is around the world of advertising, and that is, so now, Ben, you have a podcast, and you may or may not recruit relatable advertisers that, you know, how does that play into all of the podcasting? So I'm not speaking about just advertising for myself, but if I was working with you on a weekly basis and I have others that want to advertise, what does that network look like? Have you figured that out?
As a network of advertisers, you mean?
Yeah, that you can mention during your show.
Well, I know on my show, the way I do my ads is we list all the advertisers at the beginning, and then there's 2 sections of the show where we break and do like live reads. So we'll talk for 30 seconds to a minute about that particular product. For me, my advertisers do not want me to read a script, and I don't blame them because I would do a horrible job of that. So they would rather me just talk about it in general. And sometimes even, you know, you might insert a little ad while you're doing the show just because you're talking about something favorably. You were saying you guys do that occasionally too. Things will just pop up because you're talking favorably about a product that you believe in, certainly, but also one that is an advertiser of the show.
Stu, can we take a 60-second commercial right now?
Sure.
Okay, let's take a 60-second commercial, and we'll be back in 60 seconds, and I'm going to show you exactly what a commercial break entails and how it works.
If you're in the area of Boston North into southern New Hampshire and you're thinking about doing a podcast, there is a place you have to see. It's called Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. Located right over the border into Salem, New Hampshire, Studio 21 Podcast Cafe is a live working full-service podcast and vodcast, that's video on demand, studio. All professional equipment, professional producer, and total distribution of your podcast is done for you. Would you like search engine optimization for more people to find your business or better ranking on Google? Well, Studio 21 Podcast Cafe can do it all for you for far less than you think. Schedule a free 21-minute no obligation consultation by going to www.studio21podcast.cafe. That's studio21podcast.cafe. Now back to the program.
And that's how the commercial thing goes.
Nice.
And you insert that anywhere it is. We produce it in this room over here. You got an advertiser or something, you want to end up getting it. You want a minute or 2 to get your head together in between a segment or something, and we have it on the side or something. This happens to be an advertisement for our own show, but that's okay. That would be great for that guy that wouldn't put the advertisement on his own show, won't even talk about himself, that I would like a commercial within his show that was brought to you by his own company, because he won't do it. But then again, I went up to him and he wasn't interested. That's not what he wants to do, so it's okay.
So just one last question before I pass the mic to someone else.
Okay.
And that is, Dave, it seems like you offer a fair amount of coaching and preparation for your clients. Is that right?
Whatever I can do to help.
So I know in running satellite media tours or even, you know, radio spots or what have you for some of my clients, it winds up being that the client feels very much on the spot. And so I'm often coaching them with scripting points. What are the 3 messages you want to deliver? You know,
Absolutely.
what is the big take home for that short segment?
You get it.
And work with them on that. Can you also work? Do you
Absolutely.
coach? Okay.
We make them a little script to say, okay, the intro, music plays, then you're going to come in and you're going to introduce yourself and say why you're the authority on the subject. In other words, a 10-second elevator pitch of who you are and what the company is. And then you're going to talk about what you're going to talk about. And then you're going to say, okay, now we're going to start talking about it. And then you talk about it. Maybe you take a break in between. Before you take the break, you're going to say what you're going to talk about coming back from the break. You could talk about that. You recap what you talked about. You tease what next week is, and the show's over. It's really pretty simple. What I don't know is your subject matter, and that's what you got to bring. That's the toughest part of if you're a guy that builds houses, you need to know how to build houses so you can talk about building houses, because I don't know how to build a house. But I certainly know the simple way of the layout of how the podcast could go. There's other ways a podcast could go. The NPR type of style where you're going to interview somebody and it's going to be there. There's another way to do it. There's many, many ways. But for somebody that has an end game to it, a selling point of it, this is the way I think it should go, but I'm open to when I hear somebody else's. I listen to a lot of other people's podcasts to see what other people are doing on all kinds of subjects that I'm not interested in, but to see what works and why it works. And now that you've heard this show, listen to somebody's podcast. Hopefully somebody that's on the wall over there, and subscribe to them and listen to how they do it, and then listen to somebody else, successful ones, and listen to ones that aren't successful, and before you know it, you pick up why they're not successful.
Yeah, and I find a lot of my clients, I'm doing work for the greater good, so oftentimes nonprofits that are humble and are comfortable talking about other things but not themselves. Right?
Yeah.
Or smaller businesses that are so focused on the business that they are worried about their messaging and things like that. And so in offering the interview style that you are suggesting on the front end, I see a lot of value for clients to be able to do that and get over that hurdle and keep the energy for the listener.
Yeah, and if they won't advertise themselves on their own podcast, at least go to commercial break and insert their commercial in. Maybe they have other advertisers in, but at least get theirs in there somehow.
Yeah, terrific.
A lot of people approach me to have, like, instead of doing sponsoring the show or something, they'll say, my client, someone like you would say, my client has this new movie coming out, or this new show coming out, or this new product, and we would like for them to, here's why they would be a valuable guest on your show. They would be a good guest. And then they come on, they do the one guest spot, and then they go on. It's sort of like someone would go on to a Tonight Show or something like that.
Exactly.
That is the way that people have been coming to me, because mine's an interview show.
Fantastic.
And you've been able to get good interviews with people you normally couldn't have?
Oh my God. I mean, the people that I'm talking to, these are some of the films and TV shows that we've had director of photographies and, set designers and producers from Star Wars, Rogue One, Gone Girl, Game of Thrones, Mad Max, Breaking Bad, Boardwalk Empire, Stranger Things. I mean, these are the types of shows that come on and talk about their work. And this isn't like PAs, the production assistants. These are like the people that shoot these film and TV shows. And it's like, why? Sometimes I'm talking to them and I'm thinking to myself, why are you talking to me?
Because you have a podcast.
It's like these are people that are not necessarily, they're not approached all the time to tell their story. They're behind the camera. Everybody wants to talk to the stars. Everybody wants to talk to the directors. But I'm going for people that have a great and valuable story to tell and has a visual component to it. And by doing that, I'm able to talk about my experiences as a director with my production company, BC Media Productions, and I can relate to these people, right?
That's awesome.
I can relate to these people.
We love
because
this when you can get it in.
I'm certainly working at a different level because I'm doing commercials, but I can relate to them. I understand the industry. We can talk about things. We can get nitty gritty with lighting and sound and all this other stuff, and get really into the weeds with things. So it gives me an opportunity to talk about my experiences too.
Fun stuff.
Anybody else? One more.
You stated earlier that you purchased equipment 3 times trying to get it right.
Yeah.
What was the mistake?
The mistake was I went on the internet, because everything on the internet is true, and that's what it is, and then read this stuff of, this is the way you have to go. This is the way it is, and some crazy nut in his basement or something that says this is the way to go, and horrible, worse than the second equipment was worse than the first equipment, but it was written up so well, like it was so great, and it's like, oh my God, junk this, and now what do we do? And then it's like, okay, really research with professional audio and see what's out there, and I'll tell you, dealing with the professional companies, we have overdone it. There's no doubt about it. The set that you see here, I remember calling the people up, and they make sets for CNN, Fox News. It looks like that, right? This is the type of thing it is. And the lady on the phone, I said, this is what I'm looking for, and she's going through it. And I said, how about the backdrop, and how do we light that up, and whatever. And she goes through it, and she said, so what station is this again? And I said, oh, I'm doing a podcast. She says, oh, I'm so sorry. You don't want this. Let me explain to you where you should go. And she gets me back on the computer and look at this stuff. This is what you want. I said, no, this is what I want. No, this is not what you want. All you need is this folding table that has these 2 mics that come out and this recorder. And I go, no, that's not what I want. And I said, listen, don't let your boss hear you talking like this. They're going to kill you, because this was some big money for this. And I said, just sell it to me. And she said, okay. And she sold it to me, and that's why we have this. because I wanted it professional. But that's not what podcasting is. It's not professional. The majority of people do it in their basement, or they do it in a closet. And they do it in a closet because the soundproofing, the sound barrier, and it's not going to be echoey as it is. Here we are doing it as professional as we can, almost like we're really on a broadcast stage. But there's a lot of reasons for that. We wanted to actually, especially bringing in podcasters that want to do a show, and they're bringing in guests. Now, you wouldn't feel embarrassed if you brought a guest up here, somebody from the movie studios or something came and did a show, and it ended up looking like this. But if you brought them in your closet, there'd be an issue, right? There's going to be an issue. So this is for a professional to come in here to feel good about it. Also, whatever they see on the other end, that it looks like this, that it looks kind of nice. We're looking at
looks great.
At the back end. This is how it is. It's high definition. The audio is high definition. It's the best we can possibly do. And when something comes out that's better, we make a move from there. But for somebody to do this on their own, it's not cost effective. There's no doubt about it.
I'm the complete opposite end of the spectrum. I'm the one doing it in my office. I'm just there. I have a microphone. I do the podcast that way. I talk to people on Skype. We do the interviews at all different times of the day, whenever they're available and I'm available. I didn't go through the equipment problems that you did, only because before I bought anything, and plus I got into it much later. I've been doing it for like 4 years. But what I ended up doing was, at the time that I was first starting my podcast, there was a company called The Audacity to Podcast, and I think it's turned into the School of Podcasting. And they were basically consultants that I had like an hour-long call with and talked to them about all these things, like what should I buy? How do I get my podcast from my computer to the world out there? And
that's why you were Lipson.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So they set up that whole structure.
Yeah.
And that is the only way that, if it were up to me, the podcast would never end up anywhere, because I have no idea how to get it from place to place. And I think what you're offering here, that service, being able to get that podcast out into the world, that is invaluable. Nobody knows how to do that.
Yeah.
I do a podcast and I don't know how to do that.
It's most people, and that's why, unfortunately, people aren't getting the hits that they could be getting because we don't know how to do it. And it's a moving target because it changes. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, Google will decide we're going to do it a different way. And when they do that, we got to actually shift that way too, for our own sake. And while we're doing it for us, we might as well do it for everybody else and shift and try to get as many people as listening.
Is there anyone else doing the cafe, doing the...
I looked because I wanted to find the model out there so that I could at least see what they're doing wrong and improve from it, but I could not find it. So I think I invented it, and I hope it's copied, to be honest with you, because I think it's valuable to everybody, and everybody can't come to Salem, New Hampshire. You know, somebody's listening in California right now, unless, of course, I franchise, and if I ever do that, I hope nobody copies me. But right now, the model is not proven. We have a dozen podcasters, which is not enough to pay the bills, would not be enough to end up handling what it is. We need 50 podcasters. We need every hour taken per day. Then we need people to come up and bring their friends with them when they're doing the show and buy coffee, and that would be the idea of that. Or people buying coffee to buy your product because they hear about that. And this whole thing, if it ends up working together and works, and again, as I told you, I deal with cigars, and it's the toughest thing. If I can do this in Salem, New Hampshire, can you imagine what I could do in downtown Boston or somewhere else? It could really work. So let me do the toughest market of all. Who the heck in Salem, New Hampshire in February? You know, pretty tough. Not exactly the ideal spot for this type of thing. But if I can make it work here, then I can make it work anywhere.
I have not seen anything like this out in the industry at all. There are places that you can rent a studio for an hour and do your podcast, but nothing like this. Nothing that's a social event that people can actually come to. This is the next evolution of a coffee house with a band playing. This is the next step in that evolution.
And they can jump in if they want and speak. When I saw that ball, I thought it was great because I was going to have an outside mic that they would have to walk up to, and what's better than a little fun, throw the ball to the next guy, right? So
yeah, I love it.
So we take care of everything?
I think so.
Well, thank you, Hillary, for letting me do this.
Absolutely.
And showing everybody. I'm a member, and anybody wants to come see me, give me a call at Two Guys Smoke Shop or Dave at studio21podcast.cafe.
Excellent. And you can find me at gocreativeshow.com and my production company, bcmediaproductions.com. Check us out and hire us to do some marketing and video work for you.
And if anyone's interested in joining the chamber, getting to know more about the chamber, please go to haverhillchamber.com. Send me an email at Hillary with 2 L's at haverhillchamber.com, or give us a call at 978-373-5663.
Thank you, everybody.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.